Hey everyone. Alrighty. Well, Wikileaks Vault 7. Very interesting. It's going to take a while to get through this, and Julian Assange says there's more coming. This leak is really focused a lot on the CIA and CIA covert operations and a lot of the nasty, dirty things that they do. It's only been out one day, and we're already just learning so much, and there's much, much more to go through. I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, once we've sniffed a lot of this out, we'll learn a lot more. And it's really, kind of, I'm being vindicated. For those of you who don't know me, for those of you who do know me personally, you know that I've been on this stuff for 20, 25 years. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. I've been physically picked up and thrown through a door and thrown out of a party one time. I've been harassed in every way you can possibly be harassed. I've been called all sorts of crazy names, conspiracy theorists and this. But I've been studying military history and covert intelligence operations for 25 years. It's like a hobby. And so I know all about the deep state stuff. And I've always said that we need to go back to November 22nd, 1963, that the government needs to release every single thing they have on the Kennedy assassination. I personally don't really need to see anymore. I already know pretty much about 90% sure what happened. In the Kennedy assassination, the Secret Service was involved in creating the environment for the assassination. The CIA was deeply involved in the assassination itself, and the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover was deeply involved in the cover-up. It involved the entire intelligence community, the JFK assassination. It's not a conspiracy theory. JFK was killed by the same nefarious forces that are still in power today, and in fact are far more powerful today than they were back then. I will also talk to people a lot about 9/11. There's a lot of different theories out there. There weren't planes that hit the buildings. Those were like projections or something. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff that distracts from some real questions that we should be asking. But there's a lot of things about 9/11 which I also studied very much. The elements of the intelligence community involved in that as well. That needs to be totally unearthed and researched as well. But that's whole other issues I'm not going to go too deep into. I just want you to know that all the stuff we're learning and from this WikiLeaks Vault 7, which just came out, it's creating the environment where once we understand what is in Vault 7, that it begins much easier to understand how and why the intelligence agencies could and were, in fact, involved in both JFK, 9/11, many other things. Many other things. These people are into everything. Okay? Now, I also want to say that I think that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are vindicated. I believe that we should have a ticker tape parade and invite both of them back into this country as heroes. Remember, Edward Snowden is a young NSA contractor. He's sitting there doing his work, and he watches James Clapper testify in front of a congressional hearing, and he's asked if the NSA is collecting data on millions of Americans or hundreds of millions of Americans or whatever. And Clapper lies. He says no, not wittingly, knowing good and well it was a lie. He came out a couple days later and said it was a lie. Okay, so we know that Clapper was lying. Well, it was that incident, for those of you who don't know, it was that incident that led Edward Snowden to saying, wait a minute, I know for a fact that we're doing this. He just lied. And Snowden, being one of those types of guys, he thought, if these people were trying to get the truth, if these people are not going to tell the truth, then I have an obligation as an American citizen who's actually doing this stuff. I have an obligation to let people know the truth. That was the purpose of that hearing. The purpose of that hearing was to get the truth. We didn't get the truth. And so Edward Snowden felt he had the obligation to do it. And I consider Edward Snowden an American hero. I really do. Some of you may not like that, but the fact of the matter is, yes, you're not supposed to leak information and things like that. But when there's criminal activity involved, I think that you have to have kind of a waiver there. You have to be able. Now, the way he did it was maybe not correct, but the fact of the matter is, the government doesn't have a way that you can come forward. For someone like Edward Snowden to come forward and do this correctly. So he had no choice but to do it that way. Had Edward Snowden tried to go to someone with this information within the system, they probably would have killed him, and he's quite aware of that. So that's what we know. Julian Assange. Julian Assange has done more for truth about the deep state than any single person on this planet. He's, in my mind, should be vindicated. The charges against him, I don't believe. I think they're trumped up charges, and so I think we should welcome both Snowden and Assange back to the United States, or to the United States, I should say, with a ticker tape parade. They're both American heroes in my view, and I think they'll be viewed as such when people fully understand what they understand about the deep state. What else did we learn? Well, we learned that your TV, I've been telling my mom this for years, and she just looks at me and shakes her head, thinks I'm crazy. I've been telling her for years that when you look at your TV, it's looking back at you. Your appliances, your washer, your dryer, your microwave, all these electronic appliances literally have listening and visual devices in them. Your appliances are listening to you. They're watching you. Your phone is a tracking device that can listen to you, conversations on your phone even when your phone is off. So there are many, many things about the deep state that people would never believe. They just say, "Oh, well, you know, that's some sort of an Orwellian conspiracy that you're buying into or whatever." So I am also vindicated. We learned something else yesterday. We learned that they also, in their own documents, the CIA also talks about using technology to hijack vehicles, to take over the controls of your vehicles, aircraft, ships, and just about anything else. Now, again, for those of you who are not familiar with my take, again, this kind of goes back to 9/11. I have always contended since about 2003 that whoever the individuals were on that aircraft, on those 4 aircraft that were hijacked, allegedly hijacked by these terrorists, those terrorists were not flying those airplanes. I'm absolutely certain of that. First of all, the airplanes are going about 100 knots faster than what the manufacturer, Boeing, says that they are designed to do. It would make it almost impossible to fly those airplanes at those speeds. I don't think the pilots had the skill to fly those airplanes in the way that they did based on their previous track record as their piloting skills. And I've been saying since 2003 that those planes on September 11th were taken over and hijacked remotely through a fly-by-wire system. We've been using these systems since the 1970s. The Army and Air Force have been flying gigantic cargo planes pilotless since the early 1970s, flying by wire. And I believe that that's what happened September 11th. I also believe that that's what happened to Michael Hastings, the Rolling Stones reporter, who was about to drop some heavy information. And all of a sudden, he's driving down the street in his brand new Mercedes, and all of a sudden, for some reason, his car accelerates to, 90, 100 miles an hour, makes a sharp left-hand turn where there is no actual turn. He hits a curb, smacks into a tree, and his car blows up. Now, we now know from the Wikileaks that the CIA does, in fact, have a program for taking over the controls of an automobile for assassinations. It's right there in the own word. That's their words, not mine. Assassinations, by taking over the controls of airplanes and everything else. But something else that we learned, something else I've been telling people for years. In fact, if you go back and look at my Seth Rich video, I talk about the fact that they're talking about the DNC leaks tracked back to the Russians. Well, as we learned from Vault 7 WikiLeaks, we learn that something that the intelligence community, the CIA, likes to do is that they like to do what we call the false flag operation, where you pull off an act, but you produce evidence that makes it look like someone else did it. In this case, we're learning from Vault 7 WikiLeaks that the CIA likes to do the same thing with their electronic hacking and surveillance and false flag operations as well. What they'll do is they'll hack into something like the DNC and then leave fingerprints, electronic fingerprints, that make it look like it came from the Russians or the North Koreans or the Iranians or someone else. They leave those fingerprints behind, wanting those fingerprints to be found, but they'll be the fingerprints of someone else, not the people who actually did it. And this is exactly what I said in this Seth Rich video, when they try to say that the Russians are the ones who hacked the DNC or the ones who hacked into Podesta's emails. And they know because they're, even though they won't give us the specifics, they say there's information that leads the intelligence agencies to believe that the Russians were behind it. Okay, so in that Seth Rich video, I told you that the Russian computer experts who do this kind of work, as is in the case with the United States or the Europeans or any modern state, their computer technicians have the ability to go in and do these type of hacks, but they certainly do not leave their fingerprints at the scene of the crime. They leave someone else's fingerprints at the scene of the crime, which is the point that I was making in the Seth Rich video. Now keep in mind, Julian Assange has denied over and over again that the Russians were a part of that DNC hack. He says it came from the inside. I think we all know that that was Seth Rich. Okay? I think we know it was Seth Rich. I'm about 90% sure it was Seth Rich. I am about 99.999% sure that it was definitely not the Russians. Even if there are fingerprints left behind by the Russians. As I said, the Russians who would be involved in that sort of thing, you can bet that these are the very, very best of the best. These guys are really, really good. If they hack you, they aren't going to leave their fingerprints behind. If they leave any fingerprints at all, it will be someone else's fingerprints, not theirs. So I was saying this back during the Seth Rich investigation. So you can go back and watch my Seth Rich tape and you'll see it, where I say it right there, in fact, multiple times. So the idea that the intelligence agencies can look at the electronic fingerprints and determine that it came from Russia or anyone else, they cannot. Because the Russians can do the exact same and do the exact same thing we do, which is hack into something and leave fingerprints behind, but leave someone else's fingerprints behind. And you do that by going through proxy servers and by using special keyboards and all sorts of other techniques that they have, date times and things like that can be internally changed into the computer. You can go into your computer and if you know how to do it, you can make your computer look like to any other computer network that it's communicating with, like that computer is in Zimbabwe, and that the language is completely different. You can do all that with the internals of your computer if you know how to do it. So the intelligence agencies, these experts, they know how to do it. The Russians certainly know how to do it. The Russians would never leave their fingerprints behind, even if they would have hacked the DNC, which they did not. A lot of things are going to be flushed out here. So I think that we need, just after one day of WikiLeaks, I think that based on what we've learned from the CIA's own wording within these releases, just from what we know now, that we should automatically right now reopen the Michael Hastings murder investigation. We should reopen that. It wasn't a suicide. It wasn't an accident. Michael Hastings was murdered. He was murdered by someone having to do with the intelligence community. They took over the controls of his car and they crashed it into a fucking tree. Okay? That's what happened. And we all know that happened. But now we actually have at least ways. We have the information that the CIA does have a program for assassinating people by taking over the controls. And what about all these airplanes that are crashing, that are being blamed on Russia shooting them down? Is it possible that the Malaysian flight or the plane that came down over Ukraine, is it possible that the CIA took over the controls of these aircraft and downed them to make it look like it was the Russians? These are some nasty, nasty things, and they're called false flag operations, and they've been going on since I've read of false flag operations going back to 400 BC. Okay, so we're talking about thousands of years that militaries and intelligence agencies and governments have been using false flags. Committed act, but make it look like someone else did it, blame it on someone else. This went on all through the 50s and 60s with the Cuban operations. So, false flag operations. It's a term that I think is going to become very, very well known, very commonly known. People are really going to understand it. And this Vault 7 release by WikiLeaks, especially with the timing, because we have this thing with, going on here with Donald Trump and the Russians, and was he being hacked, or is all this kind of stuff fits perfectly into this WikiLeaks release, because it tells us how the intelligence communities operate. It tells us the type of really, really nasty things that they do to deceive us and lie to us. They lie to us every fucking day. Everything they tell us is a lie. I'm telling you, I've been studying this stuff for years, folks. Everything that you've been told, just about everything that you've been told by your government, is a lie. Okay? Hard to accept, but some of you are going to come into this acceptance. I've been saying this stuff for 25 years and have taken a lot of abuse for it. So I kind of feel vindicated today. I'm sure Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, others will feel vindicated as well. So we need to have a serious look at the deep state. I think that the CIA should. Personally, I would leave intelligence up to the military. I would abolish the CIA immediately if I were president. I mean, I literally would just abolish the CIA. That's a rogue agency. It's out of control. It has been. There's a lot of blood on these people's hands, and it's unbelievable. I mean, and we're going to learn a lot more. So, WikiLeaks Vault 7. Ticker tape parade for Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Reopen the case of Michael Hastings. Let's go back and evaluate some of the information regarding that assassination. And more importantly, every single damn thing that we've got on the JFK assassination and 9/11 needs to be dumped. Every damn thing. Because I'm telling you, both JFK assassination and 9/11, there are deep, deep ties to the intelligence agencies having involvement in both of those things. It's the deep state is out of control. Now they're trying to execute a soft coup of an American president and destroy the country. I mean, that's how bad this thing has gotten. It's time. It is time, folks, and it's just a matter of. I always said if people ever wake up to this stuff, and I would tell people this stuff over and over again, and they would never, ever, ever believe me. So again, I kind of feel vindicated. I think that as more people learn, and we learn more about what's coming, Assange says there's more coming. Maybe some of that stuff that's coming will give us more insight into 9/11, things like that. So anyway, it's probably a good day for freedom. We are moving in the right direction, and knowledge is power. And it is hard to accept the truth for a lot of people. It's hard for them to accept that their government or intelligence agencies would be involved in this kind of stuff. People want to believe that America is like the Norman Rockwell painting. It's the Waltons. It's this whole false narrative that we've been conditioned to believe in. This false narrative of an environment that we exist in, which is that our government loves us. They care about us. The CIA is trying to keep you safe. Okay? This is all fucking bullshit. Okay? I want you all to understand that. Maybe you don't believe me now. Keep watching. You will in the future. The truth is coming, and you have to have the courage to accept the truth, because it's going to be very, very difficult for some people to swallow. Maybe too much for some people to swallow. Okay? Y'all have a good day, and we'll get back at it tomorrow. Oh, I want to thank everyone, by the way, for subscribing, for commenting. I love the comments. I love, to hear your take on things. I don't know everything. I don't have a crystal ball. So I love hearing your comments on the videos. I appreciate all those of you who subscribe to my videos, and just look forward to try to do better. So anyway, you guys take care. Have a good day. Bye.